Today we will use some balls again. We're going to do some more self-massage. If you have them, you can use tennis balls, dryer balls, yoga tune-up balls. Even if you have more than one kind, that can be helpful, but you don't have to. I've got this big squishy one. I've got small squishy ones, and I have these kind of more firm. But I'll give you options on those. And then a rolled up firm blanket at one point you might want instead, and either a block or some books that you can stand on that won't slide around too much. So like a couple thick books or something like that. And a wall space or a chair, or a chair, or maybe both. Okay, so we'll get started, and we're going to start on our backs. And you're going to want the balls. So we're going to work with the balls in a moment. So just have them nearby, and you can put your head and neck on your blanket if you'd like, or a pillow. I got into a bit of a kickball injury, very unlikely injury last night. So you might see me kind of hobbling around. I ran into first base, and my son was blocking the base. It was a very competitive game, and I was running as fast as I could. And I ran right into his knee in my quadriceps. So I'm in a bit of pain today. Just so in case you see me kind of acting funky, it affected my low back and my quadriceps, okay? So I'm okay. It was just a bit of a traumatic injury, but I'm not traumatized, just my physical body is a bit. All right, so we're gonna start with knees bent. Constructive rest pose. And we'll just keep the feet and knees hips distance and parallel for right now. And let's start with our breath. Just feeling it go in and out. And maybe sighing. So last week we focused on fluidity, and we can stay with that a little bit here too. This idea of going with the flow, all right? Going with the flow of what's happening around us, letting us be in the process a little more. And also with the idea of listening to our body, listening to our emotions, allowing whatever is there to guide us. Easier said than done, I know, but that's why we practice. That's why it's called a yoga practice. So as you continue to breathe here and notice, let's widen the torso on the inhale. So that 360-degree breath if you can. And going for a long exhale, it might still be out your mouth or through pursed lips, or it could be out through your nose using Ujjayi breathing. Good. And then when you're ready to, you can just let the breath flow, and we're going to do some pelvic rocks. So I'm just going to press my back down to the floor. I could use my exhale or my inhale, and then rock my pelvis forward so I have a low back curve. So I'm noticing how this feels throughout my low back and hips and any other parts of my body that I might be tuned into. Good. And then let's find a neutral place, so kind of in between those two, and exhale to bring your right knee in and give it a squeeze. Good. And then we'll hold behind the leg and inhale, stretch the leg up, and exhale, bend. Just doing that a few times, warming up the leg. Your left leg can be bent or it could be straight. If it's a far reach for your arms behind the leg, you could use a strap behind the leg, or if it just feels better. All right, let's leave the leg up there and take a few breaths. Could roll the ankle or flex and point if you'd like. Good. Okay, now let's try to and you might want to have one of your props over on your left. It could be a pillow, could be a block. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to take the leg over to the left with a twist. I'm keeping mine straight, but it's okay if you bend it a little bit. And I'm just letting mine land. But if you feel like you want to come in and out of that a few times, you could do that too. And this pose in Sanskrit is Supta Padangustasana 3, which means reclined hand to big toe pose. Meaning some people might be actually holding their big toe with their hand as they do it. Good. Keep breathing and just noticing how this feels. You don't have to have it resting on anything, although it does sometimes feel good to just let go. It could even be the chair on your side. If you got your couch there, it could rest there. 2 more breaths. Good. Now we're going to use an exhale to come out. And so blow before you go, right? Begin your exhale, engage the core. You might need to bend the right knee as you bring it back up toward the ceiling. And then let's bend it, place the foot on the floor, and let's just straighten out both legs for a moment. And notice the 2 sides of your body, the legs, the hips, taking a breath in and out. Good. And then you can inhale, bending your knees, and exhale, bring the left knee in and give it a squeeze. Good. You can hold behind it and inhale to stretch it up. Exhale to bend. Your right leg could be bent or straight. And when you're ready, you could leave that leg up there straight. Mobilize the ankle a little bit, staying with your breath. Good. Now, I didn't really say this on the other side, I'm realizing, but you don't have to let go of the leg, right? So you could keep your right hand on the leg to help you control it as it goes over to your right side, right? So you can use your hand there, and then you could find something for it to land on. You might find you want to bend the knee a little bit. You can adjust the shoulder blades, reaching the left arm to the side if you want. And breathe here, noticing how this side might feel different than the first side. And then when you're ready, beginning your exhale first, and then engaging the abdominals to come up to the center. Bend the knee, foot to the floor, and then you can straighten out both legs again. And just notice the 2 sides. All right, let's bend the knees again. And I think we'll all start this one, even if you have balls, let's start it with a blanket. So I'm just gonna roll to my side. And what I did here to get my blanket rolled is I opened it up. So if it's a yoga style blanket, one of these Mexican blankets, I've got it folded, in half with the tassels touching, and then in half again. So it's a long rectangle. And then I'm going to take it from the longer edge of the rectangle and roll it up tightly. So it's long and thin. And you may need to personalize the height of yours, because where we will put this is on our lumbar curve. So that's the low back curve. And so you'll notice I'm going to have my bottom on the floor. And then the little taquito here goes on my lumbar, the low back, and then I lie down. Okay, so with the knees bent. If you get into this and you're like, ow, that doesn't feel good on my low back, then that means you need to make an adjustment, right? So what you would do is make your roll thinner. Either unroll it some or do whatever you need to do so that when you get here in this position, it feels supportive. Okay, no pain. Good. And just take a couple of breaths here. Softening through your jaw and softening around your eyes. Good. Now, we're going to just tuck and untuck the pelvis. So just like we were doing without the roll there, but in this case, what's happening is when I tuck my pelvis, bring my tail forward, my tail comes off the floor. And then when I untuck my pelvis, my butt comes back down. So I'm just doing this movement here. I can feel my core engage when I lift my tail toward my knees. I was noticing how this feels in the low back. Good, and breathing. Now you can stay with that. Another thing you can do is just kind of rock a little side to side, almost like windshield wipers. And then I'll give another suggestion, which is you inhale, tuck the tail, and then I'm going to send my hips to the right, still off the ground, and then lower them back down. And then I'll lift up on the right, take the hips over to the left, and lower back down. And repeat up, across the center, over and down, and up, across the center, over and down. Good. Now I am going to switch to using balls in the place of this roll. If this feels like enough for you, that you don't want more pressure, that this is just fine, then you can stick with this or even come into knees to chest, do some other things if you'd like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose my Yoga Up tune-up balls, like a tennis ball type size. The other ones that feel really good, but I doubt people really have something like this, is these are more squishy, soft balls. They're a little bit bigger. These are really friendly too. Okay, so you're just gonna pick, and I'm going to put these balls on the muscles on either side of my spine, right? So in the same spot on the lumbar spine, but not on the spine, not on the vertebrae, on the muscles on either side. And it's the same orientation, okay? So I've got them under there right now, and you can see my pelvis is untucked, right? My pelvis is rocked forward, and then I'm going to lift and tuck my pelvis and repeat. If you notice that this is way too much pressure, but you want a little more than you were getting from the blanket, another option would be to do this on the wall. So you just do the same thing with your back against the wall. And you have to bend your knees a little bit to be able to tuck and untuck, but you can do this against the wall, and that'll be somewhere in between, okay? So I'm just moving, and then the other thing you can do is just kind of rock. See, I'm pressing into my feet, or roll. I'm pressing into my feet, and so the balls are moving up and down on the muscles on either side of my back. And for me, mine, like I mentioned, I got that kickball injury, and they're really sore in there, but it's also not too much. I'm able to breathe, and it feels good. And then I'm just going to take a break and breathe. And I'm going to try that kind of funky bridging movement. So I'm going to press into the feet, and inhale, lift the pelvis. Exhale, I'm going to take my hips kind of slanted to the right and then bring them back down. And then I'm going to lift up on that right side, bring them over to the left, and go back down. And so I'm lifting, going across the center to the other side and back down. So again, it's just another way to roll. Now the balls are moving horizontally on those muscles on either side of my spine. Good. And if it's too intense at any time, come right out and just soften and breathe. Okay, now when you're ready, let's take away the balls or whatever you're using and just come back to constructive rest pose or the blanket, whatever you've got, and take a couple of big breaths here. Okay. Now I'm going to take those two balls, if you've got two. If you only have one, it's just a little more pressure, so you might need to be careful. And now I'm going to put those two balls on, they're going to run up and down, so vertical, parallel to my spine on one side on the muscles. Okay, so you can see where I'm placing them here. So it's above my pelvis, below my ribs, so it's not on any bones, okay? The balls don't touch the bones. And then I'm going just the muscle, and I'm putting them on that one side. And I'm going to, and this one can be really intense. That's why I've got the two, increases the surface area. And all I'm doing is once I've got them there, I lifted my hips up off the floor a little bit, and I'm moving my hips to that side and back, kind of plowing into the balls, getting into the, hopefully the QL area, which can be this source of some low back pain. It gets really tight in there. And we're not going to do this for very long, just a few breaths. The other thing would be to twist the legs to that side. I can do that too. And then, maybe 30 seconds or so coming off, noticing before you switch to the second side. Okay, then taking the balls, again, they're vertical, straight up and down on the muscles, not the bones, on the other side. And then you just press into the feet, lift the hips a little bit. You can do this against the wall. Gosh, I always forget to say that until after. So if you want less pressure, you just put your back against the wall and you do the same thing, same placement of the balls. And just go slowly, trying to relax and soften your jaw and your face. Can also twist the legs to the side. Good. Okay. Now let's come off of them and just notice. Do a few rocks of the pelvis. Good. Now we're going to place a ball. So this one, you might need your blanket instead because the two balls, I don't like the two hard balls for this very much. It's possible you can take the two harder, squishy yoga tune-up balls and put them on your pelvis. So now they are more on bones here, but it's kind of funky. So I don't love that. All right, so these are the other options. I've got two soft balls that I put under there, and I love this. I just kind of roll them back and forth, right on these soft balls, so there's nothing pokey into my sacrum. Or if you've got one of these big squishy balls, that can feel really good, and you just roll around. This is a gorgeous ball, also by Yoga Tune-Up. But say you've got none of that, then what you can do is take your blanket and unroll it to this big rectangle. And this time, roll it from the short end rather than the long end. And you'd roll that baby up, and this will go under your sacrum, okay? So it's just it's more like a burrito rather than a taquito. And I'm gonna slip it under my sacrum and just kind of go back and forth. It's a different experience than the squishy ball, but it's something. Okay, I'm windshield wipering my knees. I might pause in the center and breathe. You could also, third option, say you're like, that's not doing anything for me. You could take a block and put a low block below your sacrum. That feels great, actually. And just go side to side. So low block, a rolled up burrito, or big squishy. I'm going to choose to stay with the low block as I move into our next activity here, okay, our next pose. Right now, we're in a supported bridge pose. I'm going to come back to the center, turn my palms toward the ceiling and breathe. As you breathe in, can you feel the whole torso expand? Feel like you're expanding all the way down to your lower belly as you breathe in, if you can. And as you breathe out, letting go. Good. Okay. Now let's exhale and bring your right knee in and give it a squeeze. Still on the low block or the rolled up blanket burrito. Okay. And now you can try straightening out the left leg on the floor. So the right leg, you're holding the knee bent, and the left leg, you're straightening out on the floor. Good. And the block or blanket is below the pelvis rather than the lumbar. Say you can't get this left leg straight. Float it and straighten it and see how that feels. Okay. Keep breathing. You might even take that right knee out on an angle a little bit. Follow your breath in and out. And if you want to, another thing to try would be to inhale, lift the left leg toward the ceiling. So now both feet are off the floor. And exhale to engage the abdominals as you start to lower the left leg. Trying to keep it straight as long as you can. And then inhale, bring it up again. Good. And then next time you bring it up, let's bend the left knee. And you can hold above or below it. And then straighten the right leg out. It might need to hover off the floor. It might land. Just notice what this side feels like. Can change the angle of your left knee if you want to. And breathe. Softening around your face and your jaw. And then if you want to, you can also lift the right leg up and exhale, lower, engaging your core as you lower. Good. And now you can bring that leg down and bend it. So you're releasing both knees, feet on the floor. Taking a breath in and out. And then inhaling, pressing into the feet, lifting off your block and lowering down. And then you can either rock yourself up or roll to your side and press yourself up. And we'll come onto hands and knees. And you can set your balls, if they're in your way at all, just you can set them to the side. We're all done with those guys. So with our cat and cow today, we're going to focus on this pelvic area. So the same thing we were doing on our backs when we were tucking and untucking the pelvis. And you can see me right now, I'm mostly doing just the low back, the lumbar area, and the pelvis area, right? I'm not even doing my upper back. And I'm just kind of noticing how that feels. So you can picture that you've got your two pelvic halves. So you can keep going. You can add other movements where your cat and cow while I talk, but you got your two pelvic halves, like the two sides of your hip bones, right? And they come around and they have these high points and they come down, and then you've got the pubic symphysis in the front where they are joined with a little bit of cartilage. And then in the back here comes around, there's these high bone, and then in the middle there's like a pizza shape or something, upside down wedge, the pointy side on the bottom, which is your sacrum, that fits inside the two pelvic halves. And then you've probably heard of the SI joint, right? Which is there's one on each side that meets up with the pelvic halves, right? And sometimes often people's SI joints get a little out of whack, or things like that. And so as you're doing this, just paying attention to that area. There's a lot that can go on in there. The pelvis can be funky, there's all sorts of ligaments and stuff attached in there that can get tight. And now I'm just making circles with my pelvis. So it's like I'm tucking and untucking, but I'm circling around too. And then I'm going to circle around the opposite way. Keep breathing. Good. And now let's just come to neutral and then tilt the tail up. And as you're there, inhale. And exhale, start to sit back towards your heels. You won't see me go all the way back because of that thigh thing I mentioned, but you can go all the way back if you can. And then round the spine, tuck the tail under and come up. And I think we did this last week too. And then untuck the tail, sitting back toward the heels as far as you can go without pain. And then exhale, round and come up. And let's repeat. Okay, now let's stay up here, and we will protract, widen the shoulder blades, engage the abdominals. Good. And from here, could you exhale and slide your right leg back so the toes stay on the floor? And now we're going to imagine you're balancing a hot cup of tea. If you're able to, you can even take your left hand, the back of the hand, to your sacrum and pelvis area and just feel that area. Is it facing the floor right now? Right? Could you balance something there? And then you could put the hand back down. Keep those shoulder blades protracted and the neck relaxed. And notice that more of the weight is coming down between your right shoulder and your left hip. You can always pad things. If your wrists bother you, I would take 2 blocks and put your forearms on the 2 blocks like this. Okay? Good. Now, when you're ready, if you want to, you could inhale, try to lift the leg up, and exhale, tap it down. Now, when I lift the leg up, I'm going to try to keep my hot cup of tea balanced so I'm not turning my pelvis to the side. A couple more. And I'm still trying to stay protracted out of the shoulder blades and neck relaxed. Good. And then let's calm down. You can stretch yourself to puppy dog pose. So to do that, I'm going to reach my arms forward, keeping my hips as they are, reaching high. Your hands can be on the floor or blocks, letting your head come down. Let's take 2 breaths. So we're doing some symmetrical poses for the pelvis, right? That was a symmetrical pose, the puppy dog. And then rise back up, and let's put your hands either on the floor or your forearms on your blocks. Let's protract the shoulder blades, engage the abdominals, and then take the left leg back on the floor. Now, even though it's asymmetrical with our legs here, can you keep it somewhat as symmetrical? Yes, symmetrical as you can with your pelvis, okay? And then from here, engage the core. Notice that your left shoulder and right hip, there's like a diagonal line connecting them to stabilize you. And when you're ready, you can try inhaling, lifting the leg, trying to keep that symmetry. Exhale, tap down, and repeat. Good. Now let's come down, bringing that knee in and going to your puppy dog pose again. And now slowly coming up. We're going to come all the way onto our feet. So you can use your bear get up. And once you get up there, you can rise up, bringing the arms up toward the ceiling. Inhaling up and exhaling down. Let's do it 2 more times. Good. All right, just shake it out a little bit. We're going to take your chair and let's place it at the front of your mat. Now, the thing we want to see with the chair, I'm going to give some options, but we're going to try it this way first, is that your chair is not going to slide. Okay, so if your chair needs to be against a wall so it won't slide, do that. Mine's good on my sticky mat. I know it's not going to slide, but just getting it really solid. Okay. And then we'll stand in front of it and we'll do a little more symmetrical stuff with the pelvis here, okay? I'm gonna stand in front of the chair and inhale to reach the arms up. Exhale and fold, so you can bend the knees as much as you need to, hands to chair. Inhale to extend your spine forward, and then exhale, just downward dog with the chair. Now, of course, you could do this on the floor too. You can bend your knees as much as you want to, and notice that it is a symmetrical pose for your pelvis and your legs, right? You can bend one knee and then the other, so it becomes a little asymmetrical, right? Going side to side a bit, letting the hips shift. So if you had a teacup there, it would be spilling. You're breathing. Good. Now, if you've been doing that, come back to the center and everybody bend your knees a little or a lot and try to untuck your tail. So that thing we've been practicing, right? When we did it on our backs, it's like your tail is going up toward the ceiling. Good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to exhale and I'm going to try to tuck the tail and roll myself forward to a chair supported plank pose. And you can look at me if you're not sure. My hips are not sinking and I've got that tail tucked under, right? Good, breathing. And now as I inhale, so wait, and inhale, bend the knees, untuck the tail, butt goes toward the ceiling and stretch it back. Good, now just get to a place you can walk up to the front or however you want to do it. Just get to a place where you can see me, because when I was just kind of catching a glimpse at you guys, I noticed some things going on with the plank, and I want to make sure you correct this just so your back doesn't get sore. Okay, so this is untucked. Do you see how my tail is trying to go toward the ceiling? Might not be perfectly untucked. I'm bending the knees so I can get it up there, right? And now as I exhale, I'm going to tuck it under and come forward into my plank, right? Now, do you notice this would be untucked, right? Or even here, right? See how my belly's going down too? Ooh, this is gonna put strain. I'm not using my core here, okay? So I wanna tuck it under, protract the shoulder blades, not here or here, all right? Let's try it 2 more times, starting in our modified down dog. Of course, you could do this on the floor too, regular plank and down dog. Okay, so we're gonna start in our tail untucked, downward dog, and find your breath. Bent knees. And then when you're ready on an exhale, think about moving the pelvis and low back first. You start to round them and migrate yourself forward so your shoulders come over your wrists. You might need to adjust your feet, staying strong. So if you feel like you're in a C shape, toward the ceiling. Back your feet up so you can get more weight, unless it's too much weight on your arms. Good. And now on your inhale, bend the knees, untuck the tail, stretch it back to your downward dog. Good. On your exhale, let's come forward into another plank variation. Right, so this will give more weight with my feet back. I'm not in a C position. I'm in a slanted position, like a diagonal line, right? Not like this. Boom. But if it's too much weight on your arms like this, then by all means, okay? Now back to your down dog. Hopefully you were breathing while you stayed there. And then let's just walk the feet forward toward your chair. Inhale to extend your spine forward. Exhale to bend the knees a little bit. And inhale to stand. Exhale as you take your arms out to the sides and down. And then just hanging out in Tadasana pose for a moment. If your wrist got a little sore, let's just roll the wrist. In fact, let's all do that. We'll just interlace the fingers and then making like a figure eight on its side, an infinity sign. Noticing your breath, noticing your feet on the floor. And now reversing that direction. Okay, and then just shake them out a little bit. Now we're gonna need our block. So if you don't have a block, this is about 4.5 inches high. You could get things that equal that. You could even use a small stool. And I'm going to use my wall, but at first I'm going to show this without leaning over, without using the chair. I'm sorry, I'm talking gibberish right now, but we're gonna use something to hold on to. How about that? And you guys have done this with me before. These are pelvic lists, L-I-S-T-S. And what I'm gonna do is put one foot on the block and the other leg dangles. Remember this one? Both legs stay straight. And I'm in an asymmetrical position. If you could see my hip bones, my inside hip would be higher than my outside hip, right? And I can hold on to my support. And as I exhale, I'm gonna try to lift the outside hip so it's even with the inside hip and then let it drop. Now, when I do this, I am not putting my foot back on the floor, right? I'm not stepping down. I am simply letting it dangle and then lifting it. And I'm not bending any knees. So my knees stay straight. And right away, I already feel the side of my hip working on the inside leg. You might feel it on the side of the leg too. Okay, I just wanted you to feel it here. Now we're gonna switch sides, okay? Can turn around because we're gonna reorient our bodies, but I want you to see it first and feel it in this position. Okay, so now inside hip is higher, right? You're just gonna press down through that standing leg to lift the other hip up. It's just a very small movement. That one hurts, Janet? Yeah, or you just can't do it? What is it?
It hurts.
Yeah. In the hip joint?
Right there, yes.
On the inside or the outside leg?
On the left leg, the one that's more, I can do it on the right side, but I can't do it on the left side.
You can't do the standing, lifting, and lowering. Okay. You can't support yourself with that leg in this way, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so something's going on and causing that hip to be weaker too, because what this is working is not even the stuff on the inside, right? It's working this, which you might have felt, which you might have felt on the other side. So this is interesting, more information. All right, you guys, let's come down. Okay, let's come down and shake it out. You'll have some options, Janet, to work with, okay? So what we're gonna do now, if your back has been bothering you, anybody, your low back, you may wanna do that one again and just do it longer. The way I'm gonna show it this time is I'm going to have my standing leg, same thing, but I'm leaning to the wall so I can hinge a little bit like this. And I'm going to do the same thing. You can't see me from the front, but I'm doing the same thing I was just doing, okay? If you don't have a wall, of course you can use any piece of furniture in front of you that has your hands higher. If this bothers your back, stay upright when you do it instead, okay? And so we'll go back to that first side. Put your foot on your support. Hinge a little bit at the hips or a lot. You can look towards your feet and you see it's my right side that's on the block, so that hip's higher. I'm going to lift the left hip up and then let it dangle, up, dangle, and keep going. And I'm just going to do this until I get a little bit of fatigue in that right hip. Breathing. And then what I'm going to do, and you guys can look at me to see this first, or you can listen, whatever works for you. So what I'm going to do now, I've got my fatigue. I'm going to inhale, take the leg straight back, hips square, and exhale. I'm going to bring the leg forward as though I could touch the wall or underneath your furniture and round my spine. And then I'm going to inhale, straighten and lengthen my spine, taking the leg back. And exhale, bring the leg forward and round the spine. I'm going to do a few more of these. Whew, and I'm really working my standing leg hip. Okay, let's see. Janine, you want to see how your chest is going into the wall? You don't have your chest going into the wall. We're hinged forward like a warrior three pose. And do you see how my chest comes away from the wall when I go away? So I'm leaning forward, it's like a warrior three, and then I'm coming forward. Let's see, calm down for a second. Yeah, and Janine, if you stand like this and then fold. Stand like this and then hinge. So you might need to move your block further from the wall. That's it. So you're hinged like a half forward fold or somewhere in between. Yes, I think that's going to work for you now. So you go back, inhale, exhale, come forward. And then come forward and round. And remember, our object here is to keep that teacup balanced when we take the leg back. Okay, now that you know what you're doing, you can do a few more if you want to. I'm going to keep my foot on this block and do an asymmetrical forward fold. You could have your hands on your chair as you do this. I've just got my one foot on the block, the other leg here. They can both be bent or one might be straight. You're making sure it feels okay in your back. And now we've got asymmetry, right? The right side of my hip is higher. The right side of my low back is higher than the left. Couple breaths here. Good, and now I'm slowly going to place my hands on my knees and rise up and just stand on the 2 feet for a moment. Good, and just notice, okay? Notice the two sides. So Janet, on this side, when you go to do this, because that didn't feel good to feel very supported on that one side, what I want to recommend you do is you can fold without your foot on the block, right? And just practice, see if you can balance at all on one leg, right? So on your harder leg, just try balancing, okay? Other people can do that too if they can't do it on one side, of course. Otherwise, you're coming up on your support on the other leg. And now let's hinge at the hips, any amount. If your low back's bothering you, you can do this standing and just do the pelvic lifts. I'm going to start with the pelvic lifts, and this one, both legs are straight. And I'm pressing down through my standing leg to lift the other hip up and then let it dangle. Both legs stay straight the whole time. And we're trying to get some fatigue going in the standing leg. Your hip, and I can't see you fully, Janine, to know because I can't see your foot, and that's okay, but your hip, if you're hinged, is over your ankle. Your hip is over your ankle, so it's not further back. Okay, and once you got some fatigue, Then we could inhale, take the leg back, extend through the spine. So I'm not opening the hip like this, right? I'm not going as high as I can. I'm trying to balance the teacup, and I'm going to exhale round and bring the leg forward and repeat. And if you're having trouble hinging because of low back stuff, you could just swing the leg, right? You could just swing it. And Janet, you're just experimenting, seeing with what does work with balancing on that leg, if anything, right? If anything. Got a couple more maybe. I'm really working my hip over there. Okay, and now I'm going to come into that asymmetrical forward fold. So I'm going to leave my foot on the block because it feels pretty good, especially on this side with my little injury. And I'm going to fold forward any amount. You could keep your hands on the wall. They don't have to come down towards your feet, or they could be on a chair. Try to let your neck relax, let your jaw relax. Good, and then to come up, you can use your support or put your hands on your legs or roll up and step down. Good, wiggle it out a little bit, maybe a swing and a twist here, just letting things go. All right, now we're gonna use our wall space again, no block. And if you don't have a wall space, you could use the seat of your chair, okay? The other reason you might choose to use the seat of your chair is because the backs of your legs might be really tight and it might just be too hard to do the wall, okay? So that might be another reason, and I'll show it both ways. Okay, we're gonna stand in front of the wall and inhale, stand tall. Exhale, I'm gonna take my right foot and put it on the wall. Now, this is harder than it looks, okay? Notice that I'm not taking my leg as high as I can. I'm not jacking it up there. What I'm doing is taking it no higher than my hips so that my hips, when my leg is up, can stay even across the front, right? That symmetry in the hips, even though we're not having symmetry in the legs, okay? So if you're like, there's no way I can do this, try the chair, right? And you'll just be here and they'll be symmetrical, okay? Either one, you've got to press. If you're using the wall, you have to really press your foot into it and press the other foot down and try to straighten the bottom leg and try to untuck the tail so you're not like this. Whew. Okay, it's a stretch. Keep breathing. Be tall. I know you can't see my head. Okay, now something you can add in here, keep breathing, is try to really even out the hips. So to do that, I'm lowering my right hip down, lowering it down. So it's even with the left. You can even put your hands there to see if it is. Okay, and now I'm going to inhale. I'm going to take my arms up. You don't have to. I'm going to do that. You can't see them, I know, but they're up by my ears. And then I'm going to exhale, twist toward my right leg. I'm just going to put my left hand on the right leg. I'm going to stretch my left arm behind me, my right arm behind me, but you could also put it on your hip. Let's take a couple breaths there. Keep straightening the bottom leg and pushing the upper leg into the wall. Good. And then exhale, untwist. Inhale, arms up. And exhale, step it down. Whew, just wiggle it out a little bit. So it's like what we did on our backs at the very beginning when we brought our leg across our body. It's like the same position, but we're just upright. It's also like a revolved triangle pose. All right, we're gonna do the second side. Remember, your foot could also go on the chair instead of the wall, okay? Whichever you prefer. Inhale, stand tall. Exhale, take your leg up to where you want it. And maybe I should have done this side first because you can see a little better. I'm trying to get my two hips even across the front. If I were to take this to like almost my full range or further, like a splits, my left hip is clearly higher than my right, right? So I'm just gonna stay here. We're looking for symmetry in the pelvis as much as we can. We're gonna try to untuck the pelvis. Okay, so my tail going toward the center of the room here. And stand tall, trying to straighten both legs fully and breathe. I'm just noticing, getting curious on where you're feeling this. It's absolutely fine to have to bend the top leg. So you guys that are here are pretty flexible, but say you're somebody doing this on the recording and you're not, and you can't straighten that leg, you could either have it lower until you could get it straighter on the chair, or you could have it at the height, but put a bend, okay? Bottom leg is trying to be straight though. One more breath, and then we're gonna twist, okay? Well, inhale, take the arms up if you want to, and then exhale, twisting to the left. Your right hand can come across to the leg if you want. Left hand can reach behind you, or it could be on the hip. You're breathing. Good. Oh, that feels really good on this side for me. I don't know about you guys. Well, hopefully you're getting some benefits here. As you exhale, let's untwist. Inhale, reaching it up. And exhale, coming down. Good. Let's kind of wiggle it around a little bit. Let's do some circles with the hips now. And the other direction. All right, now we're going to use the seat of our chair. And our feet are going to go wide. So if you have to turn so your legs don't slide, you can. Mine are fine on this floor. It's going to take them in a wide V. Inhale, tall. Exhale, hinge at the hips. Okay, now I'm bringing my forearms to my chair, but it could be your hands. You might even need to have bent knees. And now I'm doing this little thing. If I stay in the center, my sacrum is the teacup balance, right? Or my pelvis. I'm trying to keep it square to the floor, right? But what I'm going to do to get a little release is I'm going to start to shift that pelvis. So one side goes higher and then the other side goes higher. I'll show it from this direction because it might be easier to notice. Maybe. See, I'm not doing anything with my legs, although the inner thighs stretch a bit more as I do this. And say you're having to have knees bent, you can still do it. You just don't bend your knees anymore on one side or the other. You keep them even, okay? This is a nice release often for that sacral area. And now you can come to the center and you could just fold, or you might want to stay upright. If there's something that feels better in your body, maybe even going side to side in a side lunge, you can do that. What I'm going to do is fold for my body. So I'm going to take myself down toward the floor, but it might be just to the chair. We'll take a few breaths here. And then whenever you're ready to come out, you can inhale, reach your chest forward. Just move your feet a little closer so that you can exhale, come down onto the floor. Now I'm going to give a few choices here. One is happy baby pose. Right? And what that pose is on the back with a wide knees to chest. So it's like I'm holding around the outer knees like this, or even for the feet or the outer shins, like you're in a squat on the ceiling and rocking. It's a nice symmetrical pose. You can rock across the back of the pelvis and low back. Or you might do twists or knees to chest. Or you might even revisit the supported bridge up on your low block. taking legs up toward the ceiling. Whoops. Or resting them on the wall. In fact, I think I'm going to choose that one. All right, so I gave you a few different options. You could try all three if you have time for them. You could pick one or kind of explore. And the one I'm choosing for my body today is supported legs up the wall. So I'm coming to legs up the wall. I lift the hips up and rest my sacrum on it. Can add any supports wherever you need them. And then wherever you've chosen to be, let's inhale and exhale with a sigh. And if you're holding a pose and notice that something else or an adjustment might feel better, you can choose to do that. Finding a place where you can practice letting go for several breaths or for a few minutes. Wherever you are, noticing that area around your pelvis and low back. And then noticing your breath as it comes in and goes out without having to change it. Feeling for spreading your attention throughout your whole body. And then practice letting go, feeling as though you could sink a little bit more deeply into the floor below you. And thanks for joining me today.